Hey guys, welcome to Musings of a COVID Youth Pastor episode. I think this is 12 we're on actually. So if you've been in here since the beginning, thank you for hanging in there. But we're doing a series called Redeeming the Time. And during the time of COVID-19, some of us feel like we have more time, some of us feel like we have less time. But no matter what you feel like, the reality is that you can use the time that you do have to glorify God, to get closer to others, and to journey even closer in an even closer communion with God. And I'm excited for all of us, and myself included, and how during this time we can get closer to God. And so we're talking about redeeming the time. And I wanted to talk specifically about one of the shortest verses in the Bible, but one that honestly I've wondered a lot during my life. What does it mean? So 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says this: pray continually. That's it. That's all there is to it. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 17. You can have a new Bible verse memorized by the end of this video. 1 Thessalonians 5:17. Pray continually. If you're like me and you've been to a lot of sermons, I've heard this one preached on a bunch of times. And I think every time I've heard it preached on, I've heard it, something different has been said. I've enjoyed all those sermons. And so here's a couple of the things that I have heard that this means before. And then I want to add kind of my understanding, which I don't think is better than the other ones, but it's the one that helps me the most, at least today. And so here they are. Number one, I've heard people describe this as the time between your prayers being short. In other words, I've heard people say it's not about how long you pray, it's how long it is between one prayer and the next that really counts, and to make that time as short as possible. I think that's helpful. The second thing I've heard is this idea of doing everything in a spirit of prayer, so that no matter what you're doing, you're continually in conversation with God. I think that's also super helpful. The third one, what I'm thinking about today, I actually want to share with a story. So me and my family was going to Florida, and we were going to Disneyland, and I was super excited, and my dad at that time worked for a hotel company. Now, the hotel that we were staying in, all the hotel rooms faced the outside. We were on the second floor. It was a beautiful, quaint little hotel, and we were staying in the room. Now, I was probably about 15 or 16 years old at the time, and I remember my dad, right before he went to sleep, saying that there had been some break-ins at the hotel. I don't think he said it directly to me, but he said it in my presence, and as a 16-year-old, I was impressionable, and so I went to bed kind of having that on my mind. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and our door was open. Middle of the night, our door is wide open. And it faces the outside. It's not like the hallway of the hotel. This is literally the outside where all the murderers are. And so I see that, and I'm a little scared. Then I hear something wrestling, like in the bathroom. I hear somebody in the bathroom, but I'm like, okay, it could be one of my parents. So I look over next to me. I think my little sister was in the room, so I saw my little sister and where she was at in the room. Then I looked over to my parents' bed, and I saw two lumps in the bed. So, mom, dad, right? That's the story. So I'm hearing rumblings, so I get up. Now, a wise teenager would probably get his parents up. Maybe a frightened teenager would just kind of scream and run out of the room and let the murderer wreak havoc on his family. But I, however, had 5 years of martial arts under my belt, and so I thought, it's go time, Ryan. So I remember walking up to the bathroom and getting ready, and I hear somebody coming out, and so very quickly I spring into my crossover side kick. If you want to Google that, I'm sure you can figure out what it is. But basically, it's the kick I used when I was kicking through boards and other objects that people let me kick through when you're in martial arts. So I get my kick ready to go, and I'm unleashing it. There's a figure in the dark. My kick is going to hit home right on him. There is a good chance something is getting broken, either me or this murderer who's broken into our apartment or into our hotel. So my foot gets about 2 inches away from the target, and I hear a voice yell out, "What are you doing?" Instantly, I pull my kick because I realize that is indeed the voice of my dad. I put my foot down, and my dad was not happy that his 16-year-old son was about ready to kick him with the martial arts lessons that he paid for. I understand why my dad was upset. At the same time, to this day, I'm like, Dad, why did you have the door open in the middle of the night? He said it was hot. And why did you have the lights off in the restroom? He's like, I didn't want to wake anybody up. So it all totally makes sense. But at the end of the day, someone almost got kicked, and my dad actually had been a Marine, so I almost got dead. So what does that actually tell us about prayer? Well, here's the deal. I learned martial arts because I went 2 or 3 times a week. I think it was 3. Some weeks it was 3. Most weeks it was 2. I spent dedicated time learning the craft of martial arts. But at the same time, because I had spent the time learning martial arts, anytime something scared me, anytime there was something frightening, anytime something happened that I wasn't anticipating, I instantly would spring into martial arts Jean-Claude Van Damme style and get ready to kick anything that came at me. Well, when it comes to prayer, I think that's what prayer is supposed to be like for the Christian. I think we're supposed to spend so much time in routine and plan prayer that spontaneous prayer becomes natural. Anytime we're faced with something that we don't know what's going on, anytime that we are life hits us, slaps us in the face, that we are so prayed up that the reflex action to prayer inside of us is so trained and so honed, we find ourselves praying before we find ourselves breathing. You see, in the church, we tend to think of the idea of scheduling our prayer times as legalistic and, well, if you're planning something out, then it's legalistic, it's routine, it really doesn't mean anything to you. I think that's silly. And we tend to talk a lot more about prayer as being something that should be spontaneous. And I haven't understood really why we see routine as being not led by the Spirit and spontaneity as being led by the Spirit. I also don't see why we have to see those two things as enemies. I think the more time you spend in routine prayer, the more you're going to be spontaneous in the way you pray. And I also think the more time you spend spontaneously praying, the more time you're going to be routine in your prayer. And so what I would encourage all of you to do is just talk about those times and those places and really maybe even how long you want to spend in prayer. I don't think we need to be so organized about it that every single minute of our day is planned, nor should every single minute of your prayer be planned. But the things that are really important to you, like brushing your teeth or working out or being on a sports team or hanging out with friends, you usually plan a start and end time to those things, not because you're so routine, but because they're so important. And so I'd encourage all of us today to think through the amount of time that we actually want to spend praying and then actually do it. Not because of legalism, but because we don't want to live a life of prayerlessness. And I think if we think about the church as a whole and in our own lives, I think our danger when it comes to prayer is not about being too legalistic. I'm sure that's a problem for some, but I think our problem with prayer is probably not that we're too legalistic, it's that we don't do it at all. And so I would encourage all of us in this time of COVID-19 to plan our times of prayer. And I want to help you out right now. I'm going to have a few questions at the end of the video like I've had for reflection. Those questions are going to be, what are your scheduled times of prayer? And then how much time do you want to spend praying in your life? And so I'm going to put those questions on the screen, but then after that, I have a friend of mine from GPYM Youth Ministry, Grayson Timbarge. I'm going to show a video right after this of him playing a classical song. And if you want to watch Grayson play the piano, I think that's great. He's a phenomenal piano player, and I love watching him play myself. But for even better, if you watch him play, great. But the reason I'm going to have him play is he's going to play a song, and it's going to take a few minutes, and it's going to be a great song. I want you to spend that time in prayer. One of the ways that I love praying is with putting instrumental music on the background. And so as you listen to Grayson, take that time to pray. If you've never prayed before, give it a shot. Oftentimes when I pray, I just think, okay, this is my time to talk to Jesus. So in the same way that I would talk to anyone else who cares about me and loves me, talk to Jesus. And we'll talk more about prayer maybe in the musings to come. But for now, just take time to pray to your Heavenly Father who loves you and sent His Son to die for you. Thanks for commenting, watching, and subscribing. And as you journey with Jesus, don't forget to pray. Thanks, guys.